All right. Your book, your intro.
Oh, are we doing Pokemon first?
That is chronologically the first that will be coming out.
Sweet. Huh. We haven't done Pokemon in a hot minute, have we?
No, we haven't done Pokemon in a hot minute. Perhaps there's a reason.
Yeah, this is probably the longest arc we've done so far.
It's just a little chunky.
And it doesn't help that it's not in as nice and neat of a storable and passable capacity like this.
But it is in a nice box set, which I can appreciate. I do love me a good box set.
That's unfortunate. That's the last like box set I'm willing to buy because the other ones do stupid stuff with publishing that I will get into when we do them.
I'm so curious, but I'll wait for when we do them. So yeah, this is Pokemon Diamond, Platinum, and Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum.
Yes, based off it's based off the Generation 4 like games, the ones that were coming out on the DS.
So
Not the
did this have an anime?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Obviously like it's still Ash. It's not the like they this wasn't adapted, but this
Yeah.
was Diamond Pearl did have an anime as well.
Okay. All right, because I was gonna say, I think we might have discussed this before, but I'm fairly certain that I have caught a few assorted episodes of Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum.
That makes sense because Diamond and Pearl was the generation coming out while we were coming up at the age range of Pokemon, like where we would be watching like
Well,
Cartoon Network, for example,
no, I
or
don't
I
re
would be playing.
I was gonna say I remember it being on Disney XD. Like
Huh.
Saturday mornings, one episode a week.
Was that in like middle school?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So by the time we were in middle school, I do remember this. It was on Cartoon Network while we were in elementary school, but when they moved on to the next anime around the time in middle school, the next season, Disney XD was playing reruns.
Ah, okay. So that makes sense. Okay, so this one was, I think, the first series that I've had sort of a childhood passing memory of because I had seen a few episodes of the like the book one anime, um, but I watched that like in college once I was already into anime. This is the first one that I saw like as a preteen.
Yes. I'm I'm coming into this at a similar spot, I think, where this is the one that like when I originally read this, I probably had more investment in this than I did like Gold, Silver, Crystal, which I had never played through at the time I had read it.
Hmm.
Um I guess I've got interesting thoughts on it, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on it first, I think.
Um, I say it was really nice to read it all together. I really appreciated that because I feel like sometimes well, I appreciate kind of like longer connected running stuff. So for
Mm-hmm.
me, that was really nice because I feel like I got to really sit with our characters, let them develop, let them kind of exist and be people for an extended period of time. Um, Beyond that, I think it was fun. The antagonists were fun. Um, you know. And it felt different enough from all the stuff we've read up to now that it that I enjoyed it. Because it does have a different vibe from everything we've read up to now, in my opinion.
Interesting. Maybe could you maybe elaborate on that just a little bit? I'm curious by the vibe difference you're seeing here because I kind of agree, but I don't know that I have it in words very well.
I feel like I feel like we started out from a different assumption in this series. And then because we got to sit so long, we got all those little moments of like slice of life that normally kind of get skipped over when you've got to cram like a certain amount of like action and chase scenes and tournaments. So we got like a fair amount of just sitting with our characters, which sort of slowed the pace down, which counterintuitively you would think I wouldn't enjoy, right? Because slowing the pace down means there's less interesting stuff happening. Um, but it felt less like an adaptation of a video game and more like a story on its own because of that
Interesting.
slowed down pace. I think it hit that perfect sweet spot where it's not dragging on about like tons and tons of little tiny stuff we don't need to know, but like the first bunch of arcs that we read, those were all game adaptations, but a lot of them were like not that many volumes, and some of them had really long battle arcs and battle stories, and so we got very little in between battles. It was just hit a battle, go to the next battle, go to the next battle, with very little to flesh it out. And I think
Okay.
this didn't have that. It's not to say I didn't like that, because obviously I liked that for the first set of volumes. But this was a nice, refreshing change, getting a little bit more funsy stuff in.
I think I can kind of see what you're talking about, especially with Red and Blue, the Red and Blue arc, the first one, which is only one volume. They really, I think that first volume, that first arc, really feels. It kind of feels like the classic anime where everything's contained to one chapter, but consequently that means they do a battle in one chapter. It's very fast paced,
Hmm.
and once they start hitting the actual story beats, they don't really stop in that one, so it goes really quickly.
Hmm.
And Gold and Silver, because of the way it's split with the crystal stuff, also kind of has that weird pacing to it. I think
Hmm.
the only one that maybe didn't need to have that weird pacing and doesn't necessarily have that same pacing is Ruby Sapphire and Emerald. But by nature of the story they were trying to tell, the like the around the world in 50 days kind of story, they do kind of move a little bit quicker and you don't breathe. And the main characters are usually not even in the same area.
Hmm.
Here we spend a lot more time with our main characters together, just traveling,
Yeah.
and they don't have, and it's given a lot more time to breathe than something like Red and Blue or the Gold and Silver arc.
Yeah. And I think there's definitely also another element of my enjoying it is just that I do remember seeing like a few episodes. So there's like a deep-seated nostalgia for like Saturday morning, like sitting on the carpet in the living room, like with the TV on, trying to find something to watch, and Pokemon is what's on. And I don't know what's happening, and nobody knows what's happening. Because I don't think I ever caught two episodes in a row. Like it would always be like it was multiple weeks between episodes. But it was never hard to watch them, even though it was multiple weeks between episodes. And so I have that image of like the characters and the anime, which helps sort of flesh out my feelings for it.
You're a
Because
little bit
this
more familiar
is
with a lot of the side cast of this than previous
Yeah,
arcs.
because this is around when I watched the first and only animated Pokemon movie I've ever seen too, which was Black and White, which is not this series, but the yeah, but I remember it came out on one of like the channels in like the 500s that we somehow had access to, um, like around the same time in middle school, I think. I could be a little wrong about the dates, but I feel like that's correct, because Black and White must have been coming out new when we were in middle school, right?
Yeah, yeah. While we were in middle school, that was when Black and White was releasing.
Yeah, so I caught the movie Black and White, Zekrom and Reshiram.
That makes sense.
So I was never a Pokemon kid, but it is arguably covering the era of Pokemon that has the best chance of making me nostalgic for Pokemon as a child.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
Because I
Uh,
was a Yu-Gi-Oh child.
Actually, the next couple arcs should be more familiar to you. But okay. I think my opinions on this are a little bit more mixed. Maybe it's because I've played the game. And look, there's actually a part of me here that I should probably get into this now. There's two Pokemon Diamond and Pearl mangas. This is the one that's like tied to the series, the ongoing series you're reading now. But there's a reason why it was changed. Like its title is separate from Pokemon Adventures, and that's because there was originally another manga that, for some ungodly reason, they named Pokemon Adventures Diamond and Pearl, or like basically the reverse of like Diamond and Pearl and Adventures. However, it looks on the manga we're reading now, it's reversed on the other one, and it's
So
a
this
complete.
one So this one says Pokemon Adventures Diamond and Pearl Platinum.
So that one was Pokemon Diamond and Pearl Adventures. And for whatever reason, they did two of them with based off of the same game, different artists, different authors. The other manga is okay. I actually like it. That's actually the one I've actually read that one first. But it's a little bit confusing. So some people get that mixed up. We're reading the Diamond Pearl Platinum arc, which is part of the more ongoing adventure series though. Um but besides that, I have a lot of exposure to this generation in particular. So maybe that contributes to it, but I didn't actually care for this arc of the manga much. I think there were parts I liked. I think I liked I solidly liked the middle to end of the Diamond and Pearl section, but I think the beginning of Diamond and Pearl and the entirety of the Platinum section just doesn't feel right to me.
I mean, but to be honest, that just sounds like a case of almost like the exact opposite of what I have is like I've seen just enough to be nostalgic, and you've seen too much to still be fully nostalgic.
Possibly. Again, I think that that could be the case. I think it took me a lot longer than I think I would have liked to really latch onto the characters of Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. And that's where I think that nostalgia might come in. But I don't know. I really don't know. Like, I think the series solidly improves the moment you finally get Platinum's name. Like, like the sort of the drama that's going on around that. Like, it almost makes those early sections to me feel worth it because we
Hmm.
get to sit with them for so long. But it made those early sections feel a bit slow to me, a bit too slow. But you said you like
That's
that slower part, so I
I
can
did.
that might just be a divergence of where we're at, and I do
Well,
recognize that the story works better because of the slower part at the beginning.
and I don't know if I would have liked the slow part as much if had been the first Pokemon thing we've read. I think it shines right now because it is opposed to the pacing of everything else that we've read so far, largely. Which isn't just like I said, it's not to say anything previously was bad, but it provides necessary variation in the reading experience, in my opinion. Because I have I think in other series before on this channel harped about how arcs just feel the same at a certain point if they're following the same formula. Famously in Bakuman, was there were like two different points in the end game of the story where I truly just felt that they just copy pasted one arc over again with a slightly different framing and then followed the exact same formula. And I was like, this does not beget interest because nothing is new. And with as long as this was, if it had been paced the same as some of the earlier stuff we'd read, I can't imagine how many battles they would have been going through. Like, you remember which one of them had like the 15 part final battle
That was
that took up.
gold. It was either gold and silver had a really long final battle, and then Ruby Sapphire had a pretty long final
Yeah,
battle
it
too.
was like tournament chapter 1, tournament chapter
Oh, that was
2,
gold
tournament.
silver, gold silver
Yeah.
crystal.
It was like a solid book and a half of just sitting in a fucking tournament ring fighting. It's too much. It's too much.
And I think
I
a lot with the main arcs, I do tend to have problems with the climaxes and the like the red and blue's climax was fine, but like gold, silvers, and Ruby Sapphire's climax, I do have problems with, even though I like the Ruby Sapphire arc more in Diamond and Pearl, I think. So I will say the fact that I like the Diamond and Pearl, not the Platinum, but the Diamond and Pearl climax pretty well here. That's a good thing, I think. That's a really good thing. It's definitely much better handled than 15 chapters of tournaments.
yeah. Yeah. So it's a nice difference in my opinion. Especially because I mean, granted, we take breaks between the episodes where we're reading Pokemon to read other stuff, but
Mhm.
that we don't. It doesn't sit for too long. So it's not as if we're taking like a 6 month break between each time we read one of these
This time we
stories.
actually might have taken a 6 month break, but that was specifically this only this arc.
Huh? Maybe.
It's not. It might not be 6 months. It might be looking like 3 to 5 months, but it was a pretty decent break there.
Huh? That's fair. I didn't think it was that long. Maybe it just didn't feel that long. Yeah. But you're probably right. We might have taken a much longer arc and I or break and I just did not notice. God knows I've because this is not okay. Well, now I'm checking because I'm curious.
Yeah, check when the Emerald arc released on our channel because
Was
it
it
would have been even before that was recorded because that was recorded decently far in advance.
okay? Do you remember which number arc that was?
Here, make me count.
Was it
Red,
the
blue,
sixth?
yellow, gold, silver, crystal, ruby, sapphire, fire and leaf green, emerald. Six.
So it was the sixth. So we did record that after I got back. So I mean, it's a problem. It was pretty late after I got. Let's say 5 months. Yeah, we did that. It was 5 months. Didn't even think of it that way. But yeah, it has been 5 months. Normally, we don't let it sit for 5 months. Normally books like continuing series is sit anywhere between like a month to like 2.5 months, I'd say, between getting back to them. So that this was an exceptionally long break. Um,
In
maybe it's
fairness,
maybe it's
part
nice that it was so separate then.
yeah. I think in fairness, it helped. Like part of why I think I was letting this sit for a little bit longer is because this is where, at least with the English, the Western release, they start resetting the number at each new arc. So each new arc is treated as more of a separate series than compared to the previous one where we just went through 10 collection volumes, which were like 3 or 4 volumes a piece. That went
Well,
through like volumes like 20 something.
and to be fair, I am curious about that going forward because separating them out like this into like 1 through 11, the general idea is if you're going to label them on their own, then they can largely be read as entirely standalone and unconnected. Like it is not necessary to read any previous works if
I
you're
think
going to do that.
I think with the major arcs, yes, that's going to hold true. There are still 1 or 2 arcs that do go back to old characters that are still resetting the numbers, but they're not going to follow on the original numbering, and they don't necessarily follow on the current numbering. But when they do like Diamond and Pearl, Black and White,
Hmm.
X and Y, they're going to reset. They're like they already have the reset numbers in place,
Okay.
and they are pretty standalone going forward. Like they're not. There's not a situation like with Gold, Silver, Crystal where like halfway through all of the old cast returns to the series.
Okay. That makes sense. Um, oh my God. You're screaming, my dude. He was sitting in the doorway. That's my hair. That's my hair. That's my hair. Ow.
So technically, we did kind of read 2 arcs here. Diamond and Pearl and Platinum are split up a bit. Did you have any like slightly different thoughts on the Platinum arc, like the Battle Frontier stuff, compared to everything up through like Spear Pillar and the Dialga Palkia stuff?
Um,
Because that's when it does get a lot more like
yes.
battle forward, and
Yeah.
I definitely wasn't as big on that section.
So what I would best compare it to is what it felt like I was doing when I was reading it was it felt like I was reading somebody's more, and now I know which story arc I'm referring to, a more fleshed out version of everything up to the tournaments in gold and silver, and then a gold and silver tournament arc again at the end, which was not awful.
Like
Yeah, I mean, Platinum did feel different. I think it wasn't so bad because tacked on to the end of Diamond and Pearl, I didn't really think about how different it felt. It just kind of felt like the natural conclusion to a Pokemon arc based on all the evidence provided to me if I viewed them as one full arc, which I kind of did because it doesn't the books themselves don't make like in the way that they look, there's no like large disparity in like when it switches from Diamond and Pearl to Platinum. Like the writing on the back doesn't change. They're labeled as Diamond, Pearl, Platinum. So it's not like half the books in this box set are
what's
labeled
funny
as
is if you look at the page itself, they actually do separate out the arcs on the page itself.
they do. Like they do that, but sometimes I skim past chapter title pages if there's nothing going on them
because
particularly.
I think for me, it feels like it breaks up the flow of what Diamond and Pearl had going. Like Diamond and Pearl ends not like it has an ending, but it's a little bit abrupt. And it's like, oh, we're gonna look into this next, and then you cut to the Platinum story.
But I mean,
And as an
but I
arc on
mean,
its own, it feels a little too much. Like, why are we in the Battle Frontier? There's no good reason for this Battle Frontier arc other than to adapt that it was in the games.
well, but it's a Pokemon adaptation, and you know that those things exist in the games. And I suppose I didn't really view it as out of place because almost like we've had this happen before, like where the arcs end in like these big tournaments and battles. And so for me, it felt natural for there to be a big tournament battle near the end of all the books that you had given me, right? Regardless of what its place was in that arc. Since we're following the same character, I kind of just treated them as like one large arc. I didn't really treat them as entirely separate. Partially because I didn't really notice when the separation first occurred, and I only caught on to it probably like a couple chapters later. I just thought there had been like a weird jump in kind of place and form. Um, and then the first half of the arc being more fleshed out and sort of less about the tournament, just kind of like by the time that the section for Diamond and Pearl was over, I was wondering if there was going to be a big fight arc like we had had before. So it didn't feel that misplaced. That's something I was expecting. And so it met expectations.
I think there's also one thing in that arc that perplexes me a bit because they do something with it, and this they kind of just drop it. They brought back Surd from the Fire Red and Leaf Green arc as one of the the commanders of Team Galactic,
Mhm.
and then he just like he shows up as like I'm here. This was like I was involved in this, and then disappears, never comes back, and they just write him off screen. And I don't want to say I'm disappointed because it's not the most compelling villain, but it felt kind of pointless to be in there
Mhm.
because this is a character that was like they were was one of the leaders of the team that Team Rocket set in the Fire and Leaf Green arc. In the Emerald arc, they were back in their they had been manipulating Max C and Archie into what led into the Emerald arc. And then they were one of the commanders of Team Galactic here, but they only show up at the climax of the Diamond and Pearl section. They're like, oh, I'm involved. I've got this legendary Pokemon with me. Hands it to someone else off screen and fucks off and never shows up again.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. I think I mean, I still view Team Galactic as a far inferior villain to Team Rocket. So for me, regardless of what they do, I'm kind of just like, ah, you're here. You're fun sometimes, but you're here. You're no Team Rocket.
I think I would agree, and most of the fan base would agree. Like, why don't we talk about Team Galactic for a second? Team Galactic, like, however they are here, were much worse in the games.
I just it like I understand wanting to change up your antagonists, right? I understand that because if it's the same antagonist constantly, you run into other sort of problems. But I think the thing is Jesse and James were so iconic, right? Jesse, James, and Meowth were incredibly iconic and they were fun because they were stupid as shit 99% of the time, but they were fun personalities and we got to know them.
But that
And
doesn't necessarily translate into the manga, though. They're not characters in the manga.
no, but the fan base remembers. If they're aware of them, they remember. And so Team Galactic does kind of pale in comparison to like any thoughts I might have about like Jesse and James, for example, when I'm thinking of Pokemon antagonists, because even if they aren't in the manga, they're still who I think of because they're the iconic ones. You know what I mean? Um, but also Team Galactic's they're interesting, but
I
they're
don't think
not.
they're interesting.
I think they're interesting in the same way that all villains are interesting.
See, for me, at
Um,
least, like you go back to Ruby Sapphire, at least the villains had a bit of an environmentalist thing going on, even if their plan was fuck ass stupid.
Hmm.
Team Galactic, I can tell you what Cyrus's motivation is as a game player, and I feel like this translates to the manga just fine. I can tell you wonderfully what Cyrus's motivation is, like the
Yeah.
leader. What the fuck is the motivation of the rest of Team Galactic?
To be a problem.
Exactly. Like Cyrus' motivation, I want to recreate the world. I have a god complex and I hate people. The rest of Team Galactic, Cyrus is cool, I guess.
But I don't know. I'm okay with like villains just being villains to be villains. It's a kids manga.
Yeah, but it makes sense with Team Rocket because in Team Rocket, they're just a crime organization. It makes sense that they're robbing random teenagers on the highway. Team Galactic, it's like, why are we here? You are part of a universal death cult. What? And you are talking about like more like they have the same thing going on as Team Rocket for the most part. Steal Pokedex from a random kid. There's no like no cohesion between Team Galactic as an organization versus the actual antagonist and like the main villain of the series, Cyrus, or the first half.
I
I
mean,
don't know.
I didn't really think into it that deep. They were just, they were kind of just there for me.
That's the problem. Like I can say in Ruby Sapphire, the villains define that like the arc, especially in the climax. Like it's very clear what the villains are doing in there. At a certain point, and it just feels like Team Galactic is just mindlessly following Cyrus, and they don't. It's not something they go into as like a deeper part of the team. The most you get out of it is, oh, Cyrus is charismatic. I think he actually does give a speech, like in one of the games here. Um, but I don't mind Cyrus. I don't mind the leadership or like the head. But everyone else is just kind of there just to create problems. And I maybe
See,
maybe want a
I
little bit more out of that, even in Pokemon.
I do. So I liked Cyrus showing back up simply because it was a character we already knew. Um, so for me that was like callback recollection. Like I like this character. And so I'm willing to forgive a lot of things on the basis of like, oh, this character that I recognize that I actually enjoy as like a villain somewhat, you know? And then like I said, I was not really putting too deep thought into like the organization following a charismatic man because charisma gets you places in villainhood, apparently. And that is canonically true across every universe and franchise. If you are charismatic, you will have little dumb minions following you who do your bidding, whether or not it makes sense.
I just think as Saturday morning cartoon villains, they're not as good as Team Rocket because Team Rocket just it makes a lot more sense why Team Rocket is the way it is. It's the fucking mafia.
You know what the
Um,
funniest part is? I actually I've liked Team Rocket for like years and years. Thought they were funny, thought they were hilarious. I actually did not know that they were like organized crime mafia until I started playing the games with you. I was unaware of that because it doesn't come through that clearly when you're just randomly seeing an episode or two of an anime that they happen to be in.
well, that's because the entire point of Jesse, James, and Meowth is that they're bad at their jobs. Like that is their entire. Like it's very clear they are not cut out to be mafia. The leader doesn't want them around, and the only reason the leader's like go after this Pikachu is because it keeps them out of his hair. Like the entire time, he's like, "Oh dear God, they're involved."
I kind of love that for them though.
Look, legitimately, James the only reason James is involved is because he comes from money, and the only reason Jessie is involved is because her mother has like was really high in the organization and had nepotism. That is why Giovanni keeps them around. Otherwise, he's just trying to get them out of his hair.
But once again, charismatic leader with people doing stupid shit below him at the minion level.
Like
I don't
everyone else in
question
Team
it.
Rocket is like actually properly mafia, even in the anime.
Yeah, but I've not really seen like put this into perspective. I've only seen in the anime really Jesse James and Meowth. I've not had long like exposure to like the mafia organization on the whole. So for me, it's just three idiots. Like my bar for Pokemon villains is so low simply because I have no context for like Jesse and James like historically. You know what I mean? Like I know now, right? But like 4 or 5 years ago, no, not a thing. So like my conception of Pokemon villains has always just been like, oh, this pair of like teenagers, young adults, and their weird cat thing who just harass people randomly and then decided they really liked this one Pikachu.
Okay, but
Yeah.
now create an entire organization with them. The organization isn't very. I think they Jesse and James lose a lot of their luster if the entire organization is Jesse and James.
Yeah, but I didn't create an organization. I just thought of Jesse and James as like a thing, a separate thing. All that is to say is that Team Galactic isn't really comparable to like the way I think of Jesse and James. So I don't necessarily compare them one to one as Pokemon villains. So, you know, for me, it was like, oh, throwback character Cyrus and a bunch of his minions. That's pretty cool. It's not the best, but it's decently cool. Like, it could be worse. We had very different thoughts on this.
I think it's because we're coming at this from two very different perspectives. For you, Pokemon villains are like the Saturday morning cartoon Jesse and James. I'm looking at the organization because Jesse and James are not a thing in most of the games. They're in two games, and they're only the two games that were like tying into the anime. Um, Team Rocket did not have Jesse and James originally. So when I'm thinking of Team Rocket, I'm thinking of the broader organization of Team Rocket, which I'm not the crazy, like I'm not the biggest like Team Rocket simp. I'm gonna be honest here, but I still, and I grew up with Team Galactic. Team Galactic was my childhood Team Rocket, but like there's just not a lot there with Team Galactic in my opinion. Even with at least with Team Rocket, it's like this is the stereotypical mafia organization. I just don't think you get that with the organization of Team Galactic.
I mean that's fair. I think in this case this is just very much a case of like two very different overall experiences of Pokemon, you know? I'm much more primed to just accept stuff at face value as it's a Saturday morning children's show just because of my own exposure to it and lack of knowledge about sort of like the deeper or like the more complex parts of like the game lore and stuff. Granted, I'm like that obviously that's expanding with reading these, not game lore, but at least the book lore and stuff. But, you know, I think I'm still primed to just kind of be like, that's cool. Okay.
Actually, what did you think of some of the elements of the because Diamond and Pearl, the games and even this manga arc do dive a little bit more into like the universal lore. Like it does get into a bit of, hey, look, these are the gods of time and space, as opposed to like, oh, this is just a really powerful ancient Pokemon.
So once again, something that my childhood experience beat this manga to is remember, historically I watched Zekrom, Reshiram, and Victini in the movies, and Zekrom and Reshiram are also from
Well,
what I
no, those are just
remember.
really powerful ancient Pokemon still. They're
Were
not,
there? I thought they
yeah,
and Victini were something more.
they're just really powerful
Huh,
ancient Pokemon, even in those
huh,
movies. Here, though, they're like downright calling Palkia and Dialga deities.
huh. You know, I really always thought that Zekrom, Reshiram, and Victini were deities.
Actually, like lore wise, they're alien. Or Zekrom and Reshiram are aliens, and Victini is just a really cute Pokemon. Really cute and very rare Pokemon.
You know, it's been a really long time since I watched those movies.
The movies embellish Victini a lot more than the games, but Zekrom and Reshiram, even in those movies, were just ancient, really powerful Pokemon.
Huh. Yeah, because I remember and okay, let me create a throwback for everyone. Um, my home screen on this phone used to be Victini. This phone That's dating when we were doing this. I think this still turns on if I close it or if I charge it. Um, I don't know. Okay, so maybe that's all right. On the topic now of I'm stupid. So I always assumed that Zekrom, Reshiram, and Victini were like deities. Because I think I actually watched that movie in Japanese with English subtitles first time, and then it was shown like a couple days later in English dub. So I always just assumed that they were deities. So my I just assumed that this was the same thing and that they were deities, and it wasn't weird because I thought I already knew of Pokemon characters that were deities. My bad.
Yeah,
That one's on me.
so far this is more or less the first time in the manga, at least, we are seeing deity Pokemon. Like Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina are like amongst the first Pokemon created, like with like the creation story of the Pokemon mythology.
I mean, that's really cool, like learning about that and seeing it. Um, so like it was really fun learning about that. I just didn't realize that that was super special, I think. I still enjoyed it though, because I like anytime that they're like, let's talk about the history and the creation mythology and stuff. And of course I like that we were in a fun new region here. Um,
This manga actually had an influence on the games a bit. So the games do something funny. Do you know in Eterna City when you have the statue of the like they have that weird statue in the manga, it's an amalgamation of Dialga and Palkia.
okay.
In the games, what that was is that was a sprite that was built to no matter if you're playing Diamond or Pearl, if you looked at it, you could see that box legendary, same sprite, but it looked like both of them. Not necessarily an amalgamation, like you could just read like just these sort of like the red and blue dress or Yanni or Laurel kind of deal.
Ah,
Um, then the manga came out and like, how do we do this? We fucking merge them into one creature and make it this abomination of a statue. Fast forward, they remake the original games with like chibi 3D models, and obviously you can't do the same like pixel art visual trickery.
mhm.
So they just recreate the same visual abomination from this manga of the two legendaries merged together. And that actually ends up coming back in lore in the prequel game where they actually think it's one Pokemon and find out it's two.
Oh no.
Yeah, so this manga has a bit of a bit of a body trail.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I appreciate that. But yeah, no, as a unfortunately, I was mistakenly already primed to accept Pokemon as gods. So that was not a shocker to me, as perhaps it should have been.
I don't know much about the next arc because this is actually the last arc I read now. Like I have not read all the way through the next arc. And the arc after that, I've read like the beginning of, but I only got to a certain point and just the translation wasn't going very fast. So I dropped it, even though I love the arc.
Mhm.
So I'm going in about as blind as you are for the next couple arcs.
It'll
So
be
I'm
more interesting, I think.
yeah.
Not to say that I don't enjoy the kind of perspective we've had going now for like 7 episodes of like someone who knows it very well and has played the games and someone who thought that Jesse and James were just off on their own and that Victini was a god. Um
You know, let's have some fun right now. You got any other like random Pokemon tidbits that I might like immediately say are wrong from your memory?
you know the one with the big horns? The like rainbow big horns?
Xerneas, yes.
Xerneas. He's a god, right?
Actually, kinda. So Pokemon has like different pantheons and how they connect actually only just kinda got leaked recently.
Uh,
Um, but Xerneas is he's a Pokemon that he's a Pokemon that like is involved in like the cycles of life and death. So it's a different pantheon, but it does connect. Like there is internal documents apparently about how this all connects back to the Diamond and Pearl creation story.
Okay. Um, let's see what there's probably only because like a lot of my Pokemon context is very broken up and doesn't really give me like huge pieces of information. I think the only other thing that I have a vaguely more than passing knowledge of is the evolutions. Um, and that's entirely because of a doll customizer I watch, so who did a full series of like custom dolls for all the evolutions.
There's not much
Um,
lore wise there to the evolutions. Though, like Eevee
yeah.
evolves into one of these separate Pokemon.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really it. I mean, my context really is like hey, keep in mind for the overall Pokemon series, let's exclude everything since I started this channel with you guys. So before 2019, I'd seen probably 5 episodes of Diamond and Pearl Platinum assorted, right? Nothing like in a row or anything, maybe 5 episodes. I've probably seen a little bit more than that of Black and White, as well as the Zekrom and Reshiram movies, because there was a movie for each of them, I think, that changed the story, like altered slightly between them.
Yeah.
So I did see both, but I saw one in Japanese and one in English. Um, and then Fat Pikachu, losing weight since 1999.
Yep.
Um, because I didn't watch the original Pokemon until 2020 or later.
When we did it for the channel.
A little bit before that. But yeah. And then this is obviously the first time I've read it. I've never done Pokemon cards. Oh, the other thing, my disastrous 3 attempts with Heart Gold and Soul Silver, on 3 different people's DS games that I never got further than the same point in the story. And the one game that you and Realm gave me that I got stuck because I forgot to run into I didn't know you could run into the long grass.
That was the introduction to the very first game, and you couldn't get 5 minutes into the game.
Uh-huh.
See, guys, whenever I laugh at Seki's gaming ability on channel, I'm not being mean, I promise.
It's an open joke. I also don't take that much offense overall. I know that I am canonically shit at gaming. There are very few games that I am actively good at. In fact, there is probably only one, and it is because I have sunk over 300 hours into it. There is only one game that could be.
I guess with that in mind, it's funny that you should mention Heart Gold and Soul Silver because that's our next arc. That was the next DS game after Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. We're finally going to get to read the arc that was based off the game that you got to play like 2 hours into at any given time.
You
Once
know what?
again, once again, this is going to be more of a short like return to previous character arc. So it's not like this is a new cast, but we are returning to the Gold Silver Crystal cast.
Yeah. I mm, I just oh, I have feelings about Heart Gold and Soul Silver these days. So the next time that y'all see Pokemon, it will be Heart Gold and Soul Silver.
Probably won't take as long because it's only like a volume and a half.
Probably. I forget if we actually put it in the schedule though. We'll see. Um, I don't know what's next. Nick Nack might know what's next. He might not. But we'll see you with the next one. Like, comment, subscribe. See ya.
Bye.